Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I'll let you start.
Well, I've spent my time trying to replicate Jeff's progress. And I posted a few things in Slack and made, what I thought was fantastic progress replicating what Jeff had developed. Let's see, I posted it up here where there's a bunch of replies.
It's all down below that.
Is it below this? Bum, 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 bum. There it is. So the bottom line is, I'd gone through I took a fresh machine and put Ubuntu 20 on it, and Jeff had provided some instructions, and he had just taken his folders and put it out on a Google Drive. And so the short story was able to copy those off. I took it in steps because, I am prone to it's just easier for me to sort of break things into pieces. And so the first piece for me was just to simply get the environment started and get the model showing up on a screen. And that made me feel good to be able to get the machine up and get the model running. And then I moved from that to getting the joystick up and running, because that felt like the next logical step to be able to drive it around. So made a couple of changes based on my joystick to get the axes settings correct for my joystick. And driving it around was like, yay, that's fantastic. And then there was a couple of launch files there. Darned if I couldn't figure out why the joy, although there was the joy was publishing, but I don't know, I wasn't quick and smart and fast enough to figure out why it wasn't converting it to a command velocity statement, but it was working on the other one. So I just moved on.
And that could be one of those Python files that needs the permissions enabled. There might be one under the joy stuff to do that. The joy, actually, that uses joy launch, and yeah, I think it's used my converter. So if the one converter program, the latest stuff I posted, in one of the files there, it says these are the Python files you probably have to add permissions back to. So the phase 2 stuff that I posted out there.
Okay. And then so the final step for me was, I was able to move around with the joystick, and Gazebo was to get RBIS running and to get the configuration showing, and then to actually run a 2D nav goal. And this was just a simple screenshot of showing, giving it a 2D nav goal and it planning the mission and displaying probably the global mission and the local mission. I think I had put two different items in the display there. So yeah, so that was super cool. So basically all of that is to say I could replicate what Jeff had already accomplished. And then I'm like, okay, I did it once, see if you can do it again. And because I've always found it useful for me to take notes and then in an attempt to go back and clean up my notes, try to do it again. And in that process, I was getting this error, and something about my process or something was not working. So I
That
didn't.
simply means that this stuff, ROS1 does not start up in any particular order. So what has happened here is something started up, it's looking for the vehicle, it's looking for the model, and the thing that creates the model hasn't started yet. So it gives you an error, but it doesn't kill anything. That mine does that all the time. The last time I started, that showed up, 3 of those showed up, but it still goes ahead and runs.
So you don't think this is fatal, is what you're saying?
No, it's not.
Um,
I ran it enough times to realize, no, that's not really a problem, and I just ignore it now.
okay. That's good to know. So anyway, that's where I was at, is I was going to go back and clean up, my the notes that I had made to so I was confident that I could do that again. And Jeff had provided some updated files, and I was going to go try to use those, which I haven't yet successfully done yet.
And as I specifically point out in my notes that I put there's like 4 or 5 like README type files in the base directory of that phase 2 workspace. And as I say there, my intention was that you'd put this alongside everything else. If you leave what you have and then copy the new Catkin workspace sim phase 2 side by side, just put that in your home directory. So you'll have the new stuff and the old stuff, and go ahead and run it that way instead of, I know you're picking and choosing files to put in, but if you just grab that entire workspace for the phase 2 and drop it in your home directory, and then go change your bash RC to point to that one, you can switch back and forth at any time by just going to your bash RC and say, do you want the Catkin workspace sim, or do you want the Catkin workspace sim phase 2? So that will save you some time there if you just drop it in there and go with it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do, is change my instructions to do just that. And the other significant thing is you had I used the Lino robot ROS-me thing to build my ROS, and you had used, straight up ROS. And so I was going to switch from using Lino robot to, building it the same way that you did.
You can do it any way you want. That's totally irrelevant to running this stuff. You have to have a Linux machine running Noetic, and you have to have ROS, ROS Noetic on it. So it doesn't matter how you install ROS. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
And I put that comment there that if you ran ROS desktop full, that it will load Gazebo. So if you try to run it and you don't have Gazebo, you just simply have to go load Gazebo. And I assume the Lino robots probably already has that anyway. So don't be confused by that. I was just, as I was thinking, I was writing it down. It didn't occur to me that somebody would interpret that as meaning you have to do it a certain way. I'm just saying, if Gazebo's not there, you have to load it. But if you loaded it either this way, and probably Lino Robotics probably also loads Gazebo, because part of their thing is that they are simulating stuff. So that's irrelevant.
So I was going to go back and try to do it this way with having a separate Catkin workspace.
That is worth doing. Just have the separate workspace, and then, as I say, you can switch back and forth at any time. If you would have had an original Catkin workspace, you'd have 3 different workspaces you could choose between, because those are all totally separate. So you got a separate environment for each one. So if you decide that you want to load this phase 2 as a workspace, and then go to your bash RC file and say point to that, then that's what you will be running out of the whole time. And at any point you can switch back to just the Catkin workspace sim by just going to the bash RC file and changing sourcing the setup file out of this workspace.
Right. Cool. So it was raining all weekend last weekend, so it was time well spent to try to get that to work.
So you have or have not loaded that phase 2 stuff yet?
In process is the answer. So
Okay.
haven't completed it. So I've got the new. I've got a fresh Ubuntu 20 machine waiting for me to copy the files down.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. Now, would you mind just, if you don't mind, just getting from a simulated GPS, and just start with the GPS as an example, as a sensor. Getting from a simulated GPS to a real GPS. Today, I have, I don't remember, is it a dev LPT port or is it a USB port? I don't, must be a UDEV rule linked to maybe an LTP, like a serial. I think it's a serial connection. How will I ingest that into? How will I ingest that into this setup?
Well, first of all, if you're running the simulator, you're not going to be running a physical GPS. That's the first thing to keep in mind here. Now, a GPS sensor is created in the URDF stuff. There's a block of code that says create a GPS, and it says go out and grab this binary file, and somewhere in there you got to set it up. You got to tell it your origin point out in your yard. So you got to give the latitude and longitude there, and it just simply publishes the GPS fix and GPS velocity or whatever those commands are. So it just directly publishes those, just like your physical setup would do. So you don't have to worry about ports or your physical hardware or anything if you're running the simulator, because they're both publishing those two messages. If you had your physical thing publishing extra messages, well, this only publishes those two, I believe. So that's something else that can be dealt with later. But you just fire it up. You fire up the new stuff I put there. It's got your dimensions for your vehicle. It's got a GPS, an IMU. It's got odometry. It's got a laser scanner. You fire it up, and that stuff all starts publishing.
No, I'm thinking down the road, though, moving from the simulated world to the physical world.
Yeah. Well, eventually we'll have a launch file that says start the simulator, and you'll have a launch file that says start your launch tractor. You run one or the other, and it should just magically work. Now, there's still, we got to get all the names to match and everything, but eventually that would be the case. So you have this black box out there that's either your vehicle, or you got a black box that's the simulator.
Right.
You got a launch file for either one, and then once you start up one or the other, then you'd have the rest of the navigation and everything else would be like another launch file, and it doesn't care who it's talking to, as long as all the names match. It should all just magically work.
Okay. I'll postpone my thinking on that for the time being.
I think that would be a good idea. I think this goes back to Bob's question for two or three meetings ago when he said, well, you got the simulator, what's going to take to switch between that and a vehicle? And that's what we talked about. And at that time I said, well, as long as all the topic names match between the two, you have to, if your physical launch tractor, say, has a camera on it, then you have to have, the simulator has to have a camera, and those topics have to be the same name. So when you switch back and forth, they both come up and publish the same things and listen to the same things. And it's just a matter of when you go to start it, either start the launch file for the simulator or start the launch file for your physical vehicle. So anything that's for your vehicle will go into that launch file. And then all the rest of the stuff, all your navigation and path following, whatever else you're doing is what could be, say, like a third launch file that, you can start that up either way, whether you're running simulated or a real vehicle.
Roger that.
So it's just a matter of organization on that. I was thinking about making some diagrams that, shows here's a box, and inside this box, there's a Gazebo, and there's my Ackermann controller. I'll mention something on that in a second, but there's the Ackermann controller and these odometry publishers in there, and maybe a couple other things. And those, when you start up that simulation block, all that stuff gets started. Oh, the other thing in there is the URDF model all goes inside of that box. And now you've got another box over here that's your physical vehicle, and you're going to start up. If you're running ros-serial, that would go in there, and anything that's specific to your vehicle would go inside of this box, inside of this launch file. And then down here, you've got another launch file. So all your navigation and everything else you're doing would go in this box down here. So it's just, if I was thinking I should draw that up, and I don't know if I'll do it by hand again, like I did several meetings ago, or try to get something like Visio and make a more formal diagram. But it would be nice if it was like have it so it would pop up and say, here's my 3 boxes on the screen, and then figure out how to gray them out and say, okay, if we're going to start the simulator, then turn the simulator dark instead of gray, and say, okay, here's all the stuff that's running in the simulator. And it would be nice to have a thing saying, here's the messages going in and out of it. And then say, but instead, if we wanted to, we could move to the real vehicle. So I gray that one out and then come over to the real vehicle and make that stuff dark so you can see what's going on. If I could get to that point where I could figure out how to present that, that would probably be handy to be able to do that.
Cool. Did you notice your YouTube video had 7, well, I don't know how many it's up to now. It had 7 views the last time I noticed.
I did, and I was going to ask, are you watching it several times, or is that just other people watching it?
I think it only counts by IP address. So I only watched, I did watch it twice, but I think it only counts me once.
I'm not clear on how any of that stuff works. It may do it every time, or it may do it per day, or maybe it is IP address. I don't know.
I thought it was IP address.
And another point, remember that YouTube DL program that we were running? That's how I grabbed the entire ROS agriculture stuff. I painstakingly downloaded every one of those 250 videos by using that program. But then Juan pointed out, oh, you can just run that program, but you point to the directory page, and it will grab everything on the page and download it for you. So if you want a copy of everything is there, you can just run that, and it'll give you that. Otherwise, if you just want one video, if you think you're going to watch a video more than once, you may as well just download it and then have it right there in front of you, so you can go watch it as many times as you want. So that's I think even on Slack, if you dig back through and look for YouTube DL, just do a search. But I think did I say Juan? I meant Javier is the one that downloaded everything. So if you search for just search for YouTube DL on Slack, and probably is the message he says, oh, I just did this. It's something like YouTube DL, and you give it a dash something for an option, and you give it the name of the YouTube index page. And when you do that, it says, oh, here, let me go grab your 50 videos or whatever's out there, and it'll just crank along till it's all done. And that program's nice because if it dies in the middle of one of those, you start it up again, it remembers where it was and then continues on from there. So I assume if you download the entire thing and then come back and say 3 weeks, run that again, I think it'll just download the new ones that were there and keep all the old ones intact. So that's another way, just for a maintenance issue, or just the fact that you would have them right there. You can go watch them as many times as you want and do whatever you want with them. And mine, I've got them on my computer anyway, because the files that I uploaded to video or up to YouTube, I've still got those on my computer. So I already got them locally, so I can go watch them and dig through them.
I'm seeing a couple of messages from you and I about YouTube DL. I don't see one from Javier or Juan.
Okay, I'm sure it was Javier that did it. It wasn't Juan. Here, let me go look at my. Why does this look funny now? Maybe I got a personal message from him where he said he did that. So let me look. Well, let's see. How do I find other people here? Direct to me, open a direct message. That's how you spell Javier. It's not my personal messages either, so I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. Here's something about it. from Javier, blah, blah, blah. He says he used that, but he didn't tell what the options were. So anyway, if you go to the YouTube here, I'll post the post this, copy link, chat. Come on. So there's the link to the main page, and somewhere in there, let's see, what does that say? Downloading multiple. Oh, I see that link does say downloading multiple files. So that probably right there would take you, tell you the command line you type in to do it. And it is as simple as going to your computer somewhere and typing in that command line, and it just automatically downloads everything. You may have to be in the directory where you want it to put them, because it'll probably put them in your local directory. But other than that, so if you go through that, and I think that's, telling you how to do the thing. So that's just a what if type thing. And again, if for some reason all the videos disappear, or if I die tonight, then people can have copies of this stuff.
Neat.
So anyway, I saw there was a bunch of views on that. I figured it was probably you trying to figure out how to download my stuff, so you kept watching it over and over. But I don't know. So I don't know how. I don't understand how YouTube will present these videos to people. If you go out and search on the internet, if it'll find the stuff. I did notice when we first started the ROS lawn tractor automation group, and I started that YouTube channel. I noticed that I'd go type in, you go to YouTube search and you type in lawn tractor and automation. Well, it wouldn't bring up the automation automatically. It would say automatically, or it would say all these other things. I think now if you type it in, go to YouTube and say search, you type in lawn tractor and start to do automation, I think it will actually bring up automation to the list. So it's been there long enough that people it can find it, but I don't know if there's anything for people to search on this and find it. So I don't know. And I don't know if it searches the descriptions that are on the videos, so if you were to put in something that we know is in the descriptions, it would pull up our stuff or not. And it won't pull up my description text files, because it turns out Google does not index text files when it creates its big Google index. So what I could do is I could make just a wrapper and say, here's an HTML page, say these are the Ross Agriculture and Lawn Tractor meeting videos, and then just right below it put a link to my text file. And that way, I could put a bunch of keywords in there too, so the main Google search would find the index that way. So I don't know.
You'll be happy to note in my Google search, it's the number one. It's the number one risk. It's at the top of my list.
And what did you search for? Lawn tractor automation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it is a specific one, they will do that. But I'm saying, when it's giving the suggestions to people, when you just start typing it in, it'll say, oh, wait, do you want to go to automation? Do you want to go to automatically? Do you want to go to autocracy or something like that? So it's just that we've been around long enough, that's caught up where it will suggest, oh, maybe you want lawn tractor automation as opposed to something else. So anyway, maybe we beat that to death now. I don't remember what we're talking about here. Oh, you were talking about downloading the phase 2 lawn track. Oh no, we were talking about switching between a simulation and a physical machine. And I was saying I need to document, if nothing else, like say for the next meeting, I can just by hand just drop some diagrams and say, this is what is associated with the simulator, and then this over here is what's associated with your lawn tractor. So like on your lawn tractor, you got ros-serial, and you got anything else that, I suppose in that case, in there, you would also have all your drivers. So you'd have your GPS driver would go in there, and
IMU.
IMU is that, yeah, if that plugs right into your if it plugs right into your computer. So yeah, that kind of stuff goes in there. But anything above that, like say any navigation or any support stuff, any joystick stuff does not go in that file. So that has to go in a separate box that says, in this box, you might want to run joystick, you might want to run move base with tab planner, you might want to do, whatever. So it's good to separate that stuff out. I know on the way the ROS agriculture simulator project got done, it's just all stuck together and it's not obvious to people, how, what the distinction is there between that. And that's why it'd be good, like right now I'm looking at the screen, we got two boxes on the screen, you're in one box, I'm in the other box, consider one of those a simulator, one's a real vehicle. And if we had a third person that would join, that would be the navigation stuff there. So it's good to organize that stuff out like that. And speaking of starting something with a launch file, I'll jump into my ROS2 stuff that I was playing with here. I looked at that stuff for about a week and couldn't figure out what I should be doing and how to get this stuff to work. But it turns out if you go to the ROS2 navigation 2 page, it says, oh, here's a getting started. I think they call it the getting started guide. And basically it just says download these 3 packages. And one package is ROS2 navigation, and one is ROS2 nav2 bring up. And the third one is ROS2 turtlebot 3 world with an asterisk, because that downloads a whole bunch of crap for that. And then it says type in these 2 parameters on your command line. One says we're using the waffle version of the turtlebot, and I forgot what the other one was, but it's just another simple parameter like that. And you launch one launch file. So you say ROS2 launch, nav2 bring up, turtlebot 3 something, and it cranks through that and brings up a Gazebo world with a 2-wheel vehicle in it, and brings up an RViz screen. And at that point, you can just click on navigation goal, and it starts navigating and driving around. So you can make this stuff real simple to actually get it started, but that doesn't really help you in understanding how any of it works, because it's all buried under that one launch file. So that's something I noticed in digging. I was going to back up. I was saying I was saying under my simulator, I've got the thing called Ackermann controller.py, which is what came from the radio control stuff. And that simply it subscribes to an Ackermann message and then creates all the values to send to Gazebo to move your wheels and stuff on the vehicle. Well, as I was randomly digging through, I found under something, it was like under ROS controls or ROS controllers or something. Buried down in there, there is a Ackermann controller plugin that will plug right into Gazebo. And it will, I think it subscribes to command velocity, and I think it will publish the odometry message. So that could get rid of both of those scripts by just putting the plugin right into the URDF for this stuff. So right in your model, you just say, instead of, well, the way you would typically, if you have a differential drive robot, you'd say, define the wheels, define the chassis, define all the stuff. And then just down at the bottom, you'd say, I want to install a ROS controller for differential drive. And then you say, here's the left wheel, here's the name of the left wheel, here's the name of the right wheel. And you've got a couple, you probably have to say, here's what I want to subscribe to. So you'd say, subscribe to command velocity. And then that automatically takes care of all that stuff for you. So it's hidden from you. And it's just a plugin, you say, load it in, and then your vehicle is now drivable by doing that. But when they went to the Ackermann stuff, there's various ways to do that. And the one I started with, the guy chose to write a Python script that does all that. So it's like a 500-line program that subscribes to Ackermann command and controls the vehicle, but it didn't have any odometry in. So I found I created that second script that reads the position, like the ground truth, out of Gazebo and publishes that as an odometry message. But basically, if I could get that to work, I can get rid of both of those and just use the plugin. So you don't have any scripts. You just go into the URDF and say, use this plugin for Ackermann Drive, and it should just magically work. And I'll have to dig through and see if I can get that to work. So that's something else. The thing is, it's buried under this ROS controllers. And you go down and sure enough, under controllers, it says, here's Ackermann controller.cpp and Ackermann controller.hpp. but nowhere in the upper level thing does it say that exists. So I just stumbled on a thing where a guy said, oh, we should put a demo for, I think he was trying to do Ackermann in ROS2. He says, well, I assume we would start with one of these. And he listed some of the radio control or the Ackermann URDF files that people have put together. So he just had, and I looked at it and said, yeah, I've seen all those already. And he says, and we'd probably also use this. And he pointed to that Ackermann controller plugin. And that's the first time I'd heard anything about that, because I searched for weeks trying to find something to do that. And now that's something else that's popped up. And so I might play with that and see what I can get it to do. My guess is the fact that it's subscribing to command velocity, and I don't see anything about wheelbase in there. I'm guessing that's not correct. It should be either switched over to an Ackermann command or put in the wheelbase and do the calculations inside to fix that. But when I get that far, I'll decide, which way it's actually doing that. Now, the other thing that popped up when I was digging, I found a plugin for MoveBase that will give you a pure pursuit follower. So instead of including the two default ones, one is I think DWA and the other one is trajectory rollout, are the two standard planners that you can use with MoveBase. Or you can go down and say include the local planner of TEB planner, so you can put that one in. So theoretically, instead of saying TEB planner, you could just say include this plugin for pure pursuit follower, and then that should just work. So that's another thing I ran into that might be of use to doing this stuff.
That would be very interesting. I mean, that name comes up over and over again as far as the quote unquote the best.
But now keep in mind what that's doing. That's gonna you give it a path and we'll try to exactly follow that path. So that means you're not gonna have TEB planner running, and TEB planner's doing all this magical stuff to give you these nice arcs to drive to where you want to go. So you'd be throwing that stuff out completely. But my thought was, if I run the pure pursuit as the local planner, which means it's going to try to follow the plan exactly, and then if I can find a plugin for the global planner, or modify one for my own use and do a Dubin's planner there, I still think a Dubin's planner for global path and then the pure pursuit for the local would be a good way to drive these vehicles around. But I haven't found a direct plugin for the Dubin's global path yet. And then since everybody decided they're going to go with MoveBase Flex, where you create your own path externally and push that into it, that's really doing the same thing. It's just instead of using the global planner to create your path, you're creating it, with an external, say Python or C++ program to do that.
Might be an interesting question to ask. Did you notice that PhD student offering help?
Yes, I did.
Might be an interesting question to ask him for, I mean, is he, in his thinking, is he planning on mixing, I'm going to use the word models or approaches, because it would be fascinating to have him talk to Kyler to say, Kyler, how did you do your turns, and how did you do your straights, so to speak? And did you use effectively the same model for both? Because I don't think he did. I've often heard him use Dubin's when he talked about doing his turns. And
yeah, I'm assuming that Kyler did exactly what I was saying. He's got at the upper level, he's got a Dubin's planner, and then below that he's got a pure pursuit planner. And he didn't use it. I don't think he used any of the ROS stuff to do that. He just simply said, write up some Python code and generate whatever it needs to, and then that his pure pursuit local planner just directly publishes command velocity or Ackermann command, whatever he needed. So he's using the ROS infrastructure to move, to network everything together. But I think his actual path planning, I think he just did himself.
yeah.
And this other one, what's his name, Gonzalo Meyer or Mir, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. He was saying that they're going to release this in several months coming up, so probably they're not putting out any information on it right now at all. But if he wants to put on a presentation, then he can tell us what he's what he's doing there. I did notice if you click that link and go to the web page he showed, it's got a nice aerial view of this big long strip of farmland, and you can see where they're going back and forth at about a 45-degree angle. If you look real close, he's got real nice Dubin's type paths, turns at the ends of each one of those rows. So that I was thinking, yeah, that would be interesting to know, because you know, if they got a picture of it looking like that, they either went out and grabbed a random picture, or they're actually have a farm vehicle that is using this path planning. And so it'd be interesting to know, you know, what do they put together to do their vehicles? Did they take a full-size tractor and modify it, or are they, like some people are building these little vehicles that are, you know, their own custom vehicles to make farm vehicles out of it? So yeah, that would all be interesting to know. And depending what level, yeah, since they're actually running vehicles in the field, probably using this stuff, you know, he's probably got the whole path of this stuff laid out. But I'm guessing it's probably more of a, you know, this one module probably just generates a path, or, you know, path segments, and then passes that to whatever controllers and planners you want to use. That personally, that's the way I'd prefer to do it, as opposed to where everybody moved over to move-based flex and was going to plan out the path for the entire field, you know, all the rows and all the turns and everything. And the biggest reason why you don't want to do that is because if you're going along and say the vehicle stops or brakes, or a deer stands in front of you and you have to stop, if you have to stop and restart the thing, well, it's not convenient to restart from where you're at if you've, you know, generated this entire field path. And now say, okay, now we got to go back and figure out exactly where it was and try to get it to start on that path. So I'm thinking that, you know, just by using the Dubins and the local, or the pure pursuit together, you would say you're at the end of the row, drive to the other end of the row, and Dubin says, okay, I'll make a straight line for that. When you get there, say to go to the other row, and it'll figure out whatever turn it takes to go to that one. So you just do it a segment at a time. So either do a row at a time or a turn at a time. You do the next row, and that it just figures all that stuff out for you. The only trick is when you get to the end of the row, the standard move base always wants to come to a complete stop before it says it's at the point. So you need to do something to get around that. So as you go from one segment to the next, so basically you can have something watching it and say, I'm within 1 meter of my destination, then switch to the next segment, and it'll generate the next one, keep going. And it turns out ROS2, Navigation 2 has that built in. They've got something called waypoint follower. So you can just, ahead of time, you just click on the screen and say, here's the waypoints. And it specifically said that does not stop at those waypoints. It does a smooth transition. It just continues right on through to make that happen, which is one of the reasons I was trying to get ROS2 stuff to work, because, you know, they've got a lot more stuff into that, into the whole navigation package, that it does some more slick stuff. But as I also found out, they've broken it down so far that they've got, you know, a whole stack of plugins and a whole stack of controllers and a whole stack of planners, and I can't figure out how to put this stuff together and make it work. So that's my problem at this point.
I feel your pain. There are very few people who have documented their path, and yeah.
I've found various bits and pieces that give me ideas of how it should work, but I'm at the fundamental problem where I need to start at the tutorials and go through ROS2 and figure out how to do everything, because the launch files in ROS2, I thought they switched everything over to Python scripts for launch files, but somebody had said, well, you can still use the old XML ones if you want to, but why use those? Because the Python is much more powerful. So it turns out a launch file now, instead of saying node, package, file type, here's the name of the file, and putting parameters under it, now you've got a little chunk of Python code that says, it basically just lists all those things out to, so it's like a one-for-one substitution. But then the rest of the stuff I'm looking at, I have no idea how it's working. And my biggest problem is I can't copy a launch file from out in, I loaded navigation and nav bring up into by using deb packages or Debian packages. So they're hiding out under ROS opt, Foxy, share is where the stuff is. So I wanted to copy the launch file from there into my workspace. when I do that, then I can't figure out, because it will, there's one thing that says, here's like the base directory or the bring up directory. And I change that to the name of my workspace directory. But when I run it, then it says, oh, I can't find the smoother planner. I can't find all this. It can't find the other stuff that's supposed to be there. And at this point, I can't figure out how to specify what the path is to that stuff. And that's just a matter, I'm gonna have to pull up all the say the launch file tutorials, and they'll say, oh, here's the pieces that go into there. And they'll probably give me enough information there if I just had the patience to stop and do that.
So if you were going to a ROS2 class, they would write launch files using Python today.
I believe so, yes.
I'll be darned.
Most things I've looked at, I haven't seen anything where they're using the old XML scripts. Everything's there is in Python now. And that might be a great blessing, but there's one more thing I have to figure out. So let me back up and say what I was trying to do. So I have the point where I can create a Gazebo simulator in ROS1. I can create all the pieces that go with it in ROS1 and start up the navigation in ROS1 and drive around. That's the stuff that, the last couple of meetings I was showing that I can go drive that around. So my thought was, now I will start up a terminal with ROS2 in it and load navigation 2 over there. And I thought, well, instead of starting navigation in ROS1, I'll just start navigation in ROS2 and have it pass the topics back and forth. So that was my intention. And I thought I'd leave everything in ROS1, like the map server and everything that I had in ROS1. I just want to take the physical navigation package itself and put that into ROS2 and see if I can get that to work. And that's where I'm a problem, because I cannot figure out how to make that work, because it turns out you have to start up. See, normally on ROS1, I'd start up, like, say, I'd start one window that starts a simulator, start another window that starts RViz, and then usually I'd start a window that says start the whole navigation launch file that would have navigation and map server and something to get away from using AMCL. That would all start on ROS1. And I thought if I just simply don't start the navigation there, so I build a new launch file that says, I just want you to run the map server to get the map, run my static broadcaster that puts ODOM on top of map, and that way I don't have to run AMCL. And I might have had a translator for like one, like the thing that, well, at the time I was using the tab planner, so I was taking the modified command velocity, and I have a script that converts that to my Ackermann message. Well, since the stuff in ROS2 is going to be publishing command velocity, I substituted the translator there that says take command velocity and convert that to an Ackermann message. So I thought all I had to do was go over to ROS2 and fire that up and get navigation to run. But for some reason, it will not pass. When I finally got it to work, it would come up at the bottom and say, it says something about, I'm trying to use ODOM, and it passed it, the thing says can transform, which means is it a valid, can I get a transformation between ODOM and baselink? And it says that failed, and then it says the reason why ODOM frame does not exist. So for some reason, I cannot get the frame to pass from ROS1 into ROS2. Now it could be none of the frames are going across. And maybe it's, if I fix the one for ODOM, then maybe the rest of them are going to say, oh, now I can't find baselink, I can't find anything. So anyway, it's hard to do, because you have to fire up the first terminals and run like you do right now, where you say source, optros, Noetic, setup bash, or yeah, you got to do that. And then you also have to do a source my workspace.setup.bash, and that's the way you're doing it right now. Probably it's done in your bash RC, but you have to do that to get the ROS1 to work. Now to get ROS2 to work, you have to open a new terminal, and you have to source the opt ROS Foxy setup bash to get to, so it knows it's talking to ROS2. And then you have to source, I think there's 2 setup files now you have to source out of your workspace to get a window to run as ROS2. So now I've got ROS1 and ROS2 running side by side. And then to get them to pass stuff back and forth, you have to start something called ROS1 bridge. and you have to run that under ROS2, and then it basically translates the topics between one to the other. So if I do that, if I start it up and look at my ROS2 window, and I do a ROS topic list, which now it's called ROS2 space topic space list, and I can see all my topics that are in ROS1. But when I fired up this piece of navigation software, which took me lots of different tries to get that to work, but it came up and looked like it should be working, but it will not. As I say, it doesn't seem to see those transforms. And if I want to start another ROS2 window, say if I've got the navigation running and then want to do a ROS topic list, I have to open a second terminal window and go through all those steps to source all this stuff again. And then I could look at stuff. So it's just tedious trying to keep track between the two versions of stuff, since they work differently. And since you have to add the extra stuff in to get the ROS2 to run, it's just, I'd get to the point where I'd fire up the simulator, and then I'd go over here and then I'd fire up the navigation stuff, and then, spend like an hour or two looking at topics and frames and stuff. And I finally got to the point where I decided, well, I'll start up RViz under ROS2. So now you type in RViz2 and it brings up an updated RViz screen. Now they got the concept, you look at the bottom, you can either start or pause or stop something. I think that might be for navigation. So I found out that I have to, back to the thing where you run the TurtleBot 3 demo. So it fires up and it looks like it's not working. You have to specify, you have to go up and say, set the initial goal, and you click on the screen. And once you set the initial goal, and also bam, everything comes up and all your cost maps show up and everything's running. So back on the stuff I'm doing now with the navigation, I was going into RViz and playing with that concept of starting or not starting. And then I thought maybe I'd put it in an initial position, but no matter what I did, I couldn't seem to get this stuff to work. And as I pointed out in my comment, about 4 a.m., I decided I was tired of playing with it. I played with it for like 2 or 3 days. I had at the point where I had all the stuff set up. It looked like it should be working. And again, back to the fact that I can't just move the launch file over to my workspace and get it to work. Well, it turns out there's several canned launch files under that nav2 bring up, and one of them is called navigation, one's called bring up. If you run the one called bring up, it starts up the map server and AMCL and navigation and SLAM. And I thought, well, right now I just wanted to get something to talk back and forth, so I used that one. So it started up a whole bunch of stuff, and since it was starting map, I went over to ROS1 and said don't start up map server there. And I just kept playing with the stuff back and forth, and I just can't figure out what why it can't see this stuff. So I'm kind of stuck right there. Then the other option I'd have is run most of the stuff in ROS2. So if I'd run that bring up file, that brings up a fully operational way to talk to a vehicle, and then start RViz over there. And then on the ROS1 side, just run the Gazebo simulator and any translators I would need. So that was something I thought of later, that I could try that and see what that does. But it's just so aggravating that I'm too lazy to go and figure out how the launch files work and how all this other stuff works. So it's really down to the point where I just need to go back and, start at the beginning and say, how does this work and why is it doing this, and see where I can go with that.
Still sounds very fragile, like a house built on playing cards, porcelain, and toothpicks. I mean, I don't think I would want to blind an airplane with a navigation system built on that many windows and translators and bridges.
And I'm just adding to the complexity by trying to get both of them run at the same time. So it's not, they keep claiming that navigation 2 is very, very secure, very well tested. It's got like 90% code coverage. So technically the stuff that's there should work. It's just that I don't know how to get this stuff to work.
Yeah, running it natively probably was fine. It's probably just trying to integrate it with ROS1 is the fragile.
And it also could be the fact that when I said start up that ROS1 bridge, you got an option that says send all topics or something. So I've got 500 topics that's moving back and forth. And it could be if I just go through and say I just want to send my transforms and send my ODOM and just limit it down to a few things. I may be better off at that point where it would work better. So I don't know.
Moving to a physical world in Noetic would that would be a huge that'll be great.
And I can't think what all the pieces are you have right now that you're running. If you wanted to move into Noetic, what it would take to do that. But I assume your GPS driver is going to have to be run under Noetic. Are you using a stock GPS driver for that, or is it one that somebody wrote and just put out on the internet somewhere? Is there a ROS wiki page for your ComNav GPS?
I'll have to dig it up. I think it's quote unquote stock. It's
So if it is, go to that page and say, do they have a version for Noetic? And it's just a matter of saying, ROS app install ROS Noetic ComNav or whatever it's called. And that, you got to load the new versions, for this version of your ROS. So everything you're trying to use, you have to reload, get the new versions of it and, specify, for the correct version.
Yeah, I mean, so ros-serial for the angle sensor, and the rear wheel speed sensors, which are, Arduino based, Teensy based deals, transmission control with a Arduino Teensy thing, motor controller for steering, again Teensy based, ros-serial, IMU.
Yeah, so the key to all that stuff on ros-serial is you gotta verify that ros-serial is available for Noetic, and if it is, you load that package, and that should take care of that. Oh, there may be other little funny things that pop up. And now you talk about the IMU. Well, now it's a matter of, for any sensor or anything you're trying to do, you just have to look to see, does it have an official one you can load using the apt-get install thing, or apt install. Now they call it apt instead of apt-get. I haven't tracked that down why that happens, but
yeah, and on the IMU, we're doing the ros-serial, reading the text deal,
okay.
right?
And then the other thing is, if you've got extra Python scripts doing something, you also have to copy those over and verify, will they run under Python 3 or not. It might be as simple as going to the top and saying Python 3, but then there's various things in your Python program when they made the change that all of a sudden commands are called something different, or they have a different number of parameters. And I know for specifically the print statement, for some reason they changed the print statement, so you can't just copy the stuff out of Python 2 and put it into Python 3 and have it work. So there's things like that you're gonna have to track down and fix.
Yeah, those are tedious, but pretty straightforward.
So it may not really take a whole lot to get this to convert from Kinetic to Noetic, but I guess you won't know until you start playing with it.
Yeah.
So that's a reason why on your fresh install, you should create a Catkin workspace, without any of my simulator stuff. Just create that, and then you can start loading that with the pieces you need, and then copy your Python scripts across and see what's going to run and not run. So basically, that's a place to start. And since you could run, you would now have 3 separate workspaces, you have to go into your bash RC and tell it which one you want to be running at this point. And then when you get done playing with that, you can switch it to a different workspace to go play with that.
I have another physical set of things to do as well. I mean, if I want to try to implement I'm going to call it your fail-safe approach. I mean, that's on my to-do list, as well as if Gazebo is, historically I've been using a Raspberry Pi on the tractor, not a full-fledged CPU, Intel based machine. So if I'm switching to Intel,
You don't have to switch anything at this point. You can leave what you got on the lawn tractor, leave it as is. And then on your base station, you just go from Kinetic to Noetic and load all the right packages. You don't have to make any major modifications to your lawn tractor at this point.
I'm nervous about the Gazebo. How much of Gazebo has to run on the tractor?
None. You're getting confused here again. You're confusing the simulation with the physical vehicle. And
Well, I wasn't.
Back to your point. You were
I
talking
know I
about
don't have to run the simulator, but you were referencing like parts of Gazebo were used in like translating stuff.
Okay, so we go back to the concept. We got a black box that's the simulator. And inside of that, it does whatever it has to. So you put commands into that, like say command velocity or Ackermann message, and it puts out things like odometry and GPS and IMU. And other than that, what's in there is totally irrelevant, because over on your black box for your vehicle, which you already have that, that is, you're putting in the same thing. You're putting in command velocity. You might be getting odometry out, might be getting IMU out, whatever. So no, none of the stuff from Gazebo will go on your physical lawn tractor. In fact, none of the navigation stuff will go on your lawn tractor unless you want to move it over there and do that. I assume right now you're running navigation on your base station and talking over Wi-Fi to make the thing go.
Historically, the navigation was all done on the RPI.
Oh, okay. Well then, so are you gonna upgrade your RPI to Noetic also? Or you were talking about just swapping out, putting a laptop on there? Is that the latest thing you were talking
Well,
about?
that was that's the sort of structural or architectural question. There's always a danger of running navigation over Wi-Fi, right? The risk is, where should you run navigation, on the operator console or on the tractor?
My personal belief is you do not want to run any more over Wi-Fi than you absolutely have to. Which,
right.
So in one case on your vehicle, you could leave your RPI to do all the low-level stuff to talk to your controllers and everything. And if you wanted to, you could put a laptop on there and have that, those two talk together. Instead of having a Wi-Fi link in between, you could put a laptop right on your lawn tractor, to add to it. And that could run your navigation and anything else you want to run. And then still have a base station that basically just fire up RViz and then click on things, say 2D nav goal, and you just send across a 2D nav goal to whether you're running the laptop or the RPI, and that starts up the navigation and runs. So again, yeah, it's just a matter of what kind of architecture do you want to run. So let me back up here, because the reason I ask, you're going to try to upgrade your RPI to Noetic, and the reason I asked was because you were talking about using ros-serial, and it occurred to me, ros-serial runs on your RPI, not on your big machine, which is what I thought you were originally talking about. So yes, again, it's just an architecture thing where you have to decide, where do you want to move the software around to, and what are you trying to get out of it. So, and if for the next meeting I put together those diagrams I'm talking about, saying here's what you got, here's what you got, and that brings up another point that we'd have a diagram that says, like what you've got an RPI that's running ros-serial to multiple small nodes, and you've got your IMU is one of the small nodes, and I guess your steering, I guess all of your things are basically running ros-serial, aren't they? So whether you've got position sensors, steering sensors, your transmission control, your steering control, and your IMU, all that stuff is all ros-serial based. So right now I'm trying to think what else is happening on the RPI on your lawn tractor other than ros-serial. But another thing to keep in mind, if you're going to swap out your RPI completely for say a laptop, Well, now you got the problem. If you were using the GPIO pins on your RPi, those go away. So if you're, I think you were trying to run relays or something at one point. Well, keep in mind that will go away if you pull the RPi out of there. So that's why it might be better to leave the RPi and just have it connected with Ethernet to a laptop. If you want a laptop on your vehicle, you could do that. Just have those two connected with Ethernet. So now all your navigation stuff is running on a big fast laptop and just talks over Ethernet to say, here's the values for your RPi, which is already connected into everything.
Yeah, I kept everything USB on the RPi. I never did any GPIO stuff.
You had that relay board. What were your, was that connected in, or do you not use that relay board anymore?
The relay board was USB.
Oh, I remember now you bought that and you couldn't get that to work. So apparently you got the USB on that relay board to work then.
I never could get it to work. It's USB, but I never could get it to work. So I never actually got it to, I always started the tractor manually. The vision was, I would someday get the tractor to start via a relay board, but I never did.
Okay, the only point was, if you have extra stuff on the RPi that requires the RPi, then you can't just automatically swap it out. But I do like the concept, like, so if I run an RPi, I just want to say, I want this just to be my Linux black box, and whether my Linux black box is the RPi or a laptop or a desktop computer, whatever it happens to be, it's nice to be able to pull the cable out, say an Ethernet cable, pull it out, plug it into their computer, and you're ready to go. You don't have to, because on RPi, if you build it up around that, start hooking a lot of stuff up to the GPIO pins on that, well, now you can't easily duplicate that somewhere else. So that's why I've tried to stay away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, other than the physicality of the footprint, I'm logically at that point.
Okay. I remember back when Matt was doing his, he had a relay board connected to the GPIO pins on the RPi, which means now those two are, connected together as a unit, and you can't just swap that out. So that's why I tried to avoid that. I might use GPIO pins, say if I want to put a real-time clock on, I can plug that in, but that would go with, the RPi. So if I replace the RPi with a laptop, well, it's already got a real-time clock, so I don't care about that. And then I might use GPIO pins if I would do, say, power sequencing on the RPi, as far as powering it up and powering it down automatically, I might use it for that. But again, that's just like simulating what a laptop would do. So again, that would just, if I pull the RPi out, that would all go with it, and I don't have to try to duplicate that somewhere else. Which, I'm just babbling now, but anyway, that's, it's just really, you have to think about how do you want to look at this stuff, what are the pieces doing right now? And, if you wanted to swap something out, do you lose anything by doing that? And it sounds like, since your stuff is all going over USB, that, that whether you run it on an RPi or plug it into a laptop, your USB hub, that stuff should be able to work. Or if you just want to leave everything on the RPi the way it is, and they just have that talk to either another computer on board or talk to it over Wi-Fi. So that, again, you've got lots of different architecture choices you could make here.
Yeah, it's just physically rejiggering the implementation physically. Landscape. Mucking around with the real estate. Okay.
And
Well,
I have to decide, do I want to play with ROS2 anymore or go back to what I was doing? And if I go back to what I'm doing, I have no idea what I was doing. So I have to figure out, what do I work on the simulator some more? And if I do, I might try doing that, swapping out that Ackermann controller and see if I can get that plug-in to work. That would be a very beneficial thing to do. And then it would be, I was gonna say, it's gonna be fully supported, although I think there might be an issue, the fact it's putting out, it's listening to command velocity, but I don't think they're doing it correctly. So even though it's supported, that might still have to be fixed.
Pure pursuit.
And then there is that pure pursuit planner, but in order to use that, I'd have to come up with a something to feed that with a decent path. So So yeah, I got all those different things to play with. I don't know what to do at this point. My biggest problem is I got to do my taxes. You know, I don't want to wait till Monday at midnight to start on my taxes. So, but they
Do
should
we
be.
have till Monday at midnight?
I believe so. Yes, something about there's something happening. I can't remember what it is. They just go to Google and say 2022 tax day. It'll say, oh, it's on the 18th because they moved it for some reason. Which of course allowed me to not even look at my taxes until yesterday. And what tomorrow's, so technically tomorrow would be tax day, but they gave me 3 extra days.
Stop the recording. Don't say anything that will be used against you by the tax man.
So do we have any other thing we want recorded?
No.
So I'm just back to playing, I guess. So that's my thing. So I'll go ahead and stop it.